When I was growing up, I had chores to do just like any other kid. And one of my chores was to clean the bathroom. I hated it. It was gross, and there was no easy way to do it. When my parents would ask me to do the perfectly reasonable chore, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to do the hard work. I would yell, I would scream at my parents anytime they reminded me to clean it. And eventually, after conversations and really consequences, I would begrudgingly grab a rag and cleaner and get to work. I would go in and I would clean the bathroom. I'd wipe down the counters, I'd clean the mirror, I'd scrub out the shower, and I'd scrub out the toilet. I did the right thing, but there's a little problem. See, I did the right thing, but I certainly had the wrong attitude when I did it. Paul wrote a letter to his friend Philemon, and Philemon owned a slave named Onesimus, who had run away from his master. And Paul had met Onesimus after he had fled, and Onesimus began believing in God and became a follower of Jesus. Paul then sent Onesimus back home to Philemon with this letter, asking Philemon to forgive Onesimus and to treat him as a brother, not a slave. Paul asked Philemon for his help. I could demand it in the name of Christ because it is the right thing for you to do, but because of our love, I prefer simply to ask you. And a few verses later, he says, but I didn't want to do anything without your consent. I wanted you to help because you were willing, not because you were forced. See, the way Paul asks points to how important it is to be willing to give rather than to be forced to give. As we've been thinking about how our money can impact other people in their future, we've also been learning what God says in regards to our money, our possessions, and our giving. And it's important to do the right thing, but it's also important to have the right attitude. Now, doing the right thing is important. Doing the right thing willingly is better. Whether we're talking about cleaning a bathroom or responding willingly to what God asks, Paul is asking us to do the right thing with the right attitude. When we give, we're called to do so, but we're also called to do so willingly. So giving is the right thing, and giving willingly and cheerfully is even better. It's actually seen as an act of worship. Was there a time in your life where you really responded to who God is and what He's done? Maybe you went to a night of worship here at the Ridge and God really impacted you, or you went on a mission trip and thought of God in a way you never had before. For me, I remember the first time I went to the ocean and saw the power and the vastness of God. I'd never felt so small or realized God was so big. And right then and there, I began to worship. We often think of worship as singing, and that's a good place to start. And that's one great way we can worship. But worship on a very basic level is our adoration and affection towards something or someone. In the context of God, we worship and give God our praise and adoration because of who He is and what He's done. It's our response. And we can do it in a lot of different ways. Colossians 3:17 says, and whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through Him to God the Father. Whatever we do, think, say, or feel can be done as an act of worship with the right attitude towards God. How we work at our jobs or in our homes can be an act of worship. How we interact with friends or coworkers or family or even strangers can be an act of worship. Prayer is communication with God and an act of worship. Reading and learning what God says through the Bible is a way to grow and an act of worship. Serving is a way to live out God's commands and help other people, and it's an act of worship. See the pattern there? See, the thing is, we can do all of those things, pray and read our Bible and interact with others and serve. We can do all of those things that are right, but what's our attitude when we do them? So today I want to give you this thought that might help in the context of generosity and giving. Giving is an act of worship. When we give, what's happening in your head and in your heart? Do you give because you have to? Because you feel guilted or shamed into doing it? Or do you give because you want to? And you feel like it honors God and responds to who He is and what He's done? When we give, it's an act of worship. And over the next few weeks, thinking about giving as an act of worship can completely transform the way we interact with generosity and money. Keeping our focus on doing the right thing willingly can help us remember all of the things God has already done for us. Now, sometimes when Abby and I are talking about what it means for us to give generously, I like to start with remembering all of the things that God has already done for us. He's given us breath, for example. We can thank God for His creation, or my family, or even having the opportunity to think about generosity at all. When we take time and remember to do this, it changes the conversation from what do we have to give to what do we get to give. It's not about the amount, it's about the heart. And giving willingly as an act of worship and response to God is the right thing every time.